Staff Sergeant Robert Bobby Chen crouched beneath the wing of a damaged P-51 Mustang as Japanese bombs exploded across the airfield at Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. At 26 years old, he was the most skilled aircraft mechanic in the Marine Air Group 23, capable of rebuilding engines, repairing battle damage, and improvising solutions to mechanical problems that would ground aircraft at better-equipped bases. But on this sweltering August afternoon in 1943, as enemy aircraft pounded the strategically vital airstrip with devastating accuracy, Bobby faced the most dangerous repair job of his career, fixing a squadron commander's fighter while bombs fell all around him. The damaged Mustang belonged to Major William Hayes, the commanding officer of VMF 214, who had limped back to Henderson Field after a dogfight with Japanese Zeros that had damaged his aircraft's fuel system and hydraulic lines. The fighter had landed successfully, but inspection revealed damage so extensive that most mechanics would have declared the aircraft unserviceable until the base could be evacuated to a safer repair facility. But Henderson Field had no safer facilities, and Major Hayes needed his aircraft operational within hours for a critical mission against Japanese shipping. Bobby had grown up in San Francisco's Chinatown, the son of immigrants who had fled political upheaval in Canton Province during the 1920s. His father operated a small garage where Bobby had learned automotive mechanics by working on cars, trucks, and even marine engines from waterfront vessels. His natural mechanical aptitude and obsessive attention to detail had made him one of the most sought-after mechanics in the neighborhood by age 18. When the United States entered World War II following Pearl Harbor, Bobby had immediately volunteered for military service, understanding that Chinese Americans had both patriotic obligations and personal reasons for fighting Japan, which had been occupying China since 1937. His mechanical skills had made him valuable for aircraft maintenance duty, leading to assignment with Marine aviation units that were fighting desperate battles to control strategic airfields throughout the Pacific Theater. Henderson Field on Guadalcanal represented one of the most contested pieces of real estate in the entire Pacific campaign. The airstrip provided the only forward airbase from which American forces could support naval operations and protect supply lines essential for advancing toward Japan. Japanese forces recognized the field's strategic importance and subjected it to almost daily bombing raids designed to destroy aircraft, kill personnel, and render the runway unusable for flight operations. Working as an aircraft mechanic at Henderson Field required not just technical skill, but extraordinary courage and dedication to keeping aircraft operational under conditions that would have been unthinkable at stateside bases. Mechanics worked in open-air facilities with minimal protection from bombing attacks, using improvised tools and scavenged parts to repair battle-damaged aircraft that required complete overhauls in proper maintenance facilities. What would you do if your job required working in the open while enemy bombs fell around you? The damage to Major Hayes's P-51 was severe enough to require several hours of concentrated work under ideal conditions. The fuel system had been penetrated by Japanese machine gun fire, creating leaks that would cause engine failure if not properly repaired. The hydraulic lines that operated the landing gear and flight controls had been severed in multiple locations, requiring complete replacement with parts that were in critically short supply at the forward base. Under normal circumstances, Bobby would have ordered Major Hayes's aircraft removed from the flight line and transported to a protected revetment where repairs could be conducted with minimal exposure to enemy action. But the Japanese bombing raid had begun just as he started his inspection, making it impossible to move the damaged fighter without exposing it to direct hits that would destroy the aircraft completely. The alternative was to conduct repairs on the flight line while Japanese bombers continued their attack on Henderson Field, working beneath the damaged aircraft while explosions cratered the runway and destroyed other planes around him. It was essentially suicidal to remain exposed during an air raid, but abandoning the repair work would mean Major Hayes would miss his mission and potentially cost American forces a critical tactical victory. Bobby made his decision within seconds of the first bombs falling.
Rather than seeking shelter in the reinforced bunkers that lined the airfield perimeter, he crawled beneath Major Hayes's P-51 and began working on the damaged fuel system using hand tools and spare parts he had gathered while doing his initial inspection. The repair work required absolute precision and steady hands, qualities that became extraordinarily difficult to maintain while bombs exploded close enough to shower him with debris and create shockwaves that rattled his tools and equipment. The Japanese bombing attack that afternoon was particularly intense, with over 20 aircraft targeting Henderson Field in coordinated strikes designed to destroy as many American planes as possible. Bombs fell in patterns that walked across the airfield, each explosion creating craters that would require hours of repair work before the runway could be used again for flight operations. Bobby worked with focused intensity that blocked out the chaos erupting around him. His hands moved automatically through repair procedures he had performed hundreds of times, but never under such extreme conditions. He disconnected damaged fuel lines, installed replacement components from his parts kit, and pressure tested each connection to ensure there would be no leaks when the engine was restarted. The hydraulic system repairs presented even greater challenges because they required precise alignment of control linkages while working in cramped spaces beneath the aircraft's fuselage. Bobby had to reach into narrow gaps between structural members, feeling for connection points he couldn't see while bombs continued to explode across the airfield. One mistake in the hydraulic repairs could result in flight control failure that would kill Major Hayes during his next combat mission.
Have you ever had to perform precise technical work while under extreme stress and danger? As Bobby worked on the hydraulic repairs, a bomb exploded approximately 50 yards from Major Hayes's aircraft, close enough that the blast wave lifted the P-51's tail and shifted the entire plane several feet to one side. The explosion showered Bobby with dirt, rocks, and metal fragments from destroyed equipment, while the shock wave momentarily stunned him and caused temporary hearing loss that left his ears ringing painfully. For several seconds, Bobby lay motionless beneath the aircraft, his mind struggling to process what had happened and assess whether he had been injured by the blast. His training had taught him to check for wounds immediately after explosions, as shock could mask serious injuries that would prove fatal if not treated quickly. But his self-examination revealed only minor cuts and bruises, nothing that would prevent him from continuing the repair work. The near-miss explosion had damaged some of the hydraulic components Bobby had just installed, requiring him to repeat portions of the repair procedure using his dwindling supply of spare parts. The setback added precious minutes to work that needed to be completed before Japanese bombers returned for what intelligence reports suggested would be a second attack wave within the hour. Bobby's commitment to completing the repairs despite the near-death experience represented the kind of dedication that was common among aircraft mechanics at forward bases like Henderson Field. These men understood that every operational aircraft represented crucial tactical capabilities for American forces fighting desperate battles throughout the Pacific, and that their technical skills could directly influence whether pilots lived or died during combat missions. The hydraulic system repairs required another 30 minutes of intense concentration while the bombing rate continued. Bobby installed replacement hydraulic lines, reconnected flight control linkages, and tested each component to ensure proper operation. The work demanded absolute precision because any errors would compromise flight safety and potentially cause Major Hayes's aircraft to crash during his next mission. As Bobby completed the hydraulic repairs and began final inspections of his work, he became aware that other mechanics had joined him beneath Major Hayes's P-51, working on different aircraft systems that had been damaged by the near-miss bomb explosion. These men had made the same decision Bobby had made, that completing urgent repairs was more important than seeking safety from the ongoing bombing attack. The spontaneous cooperation between mechanics working under fire demonstrated the extraordinary teamwork and mutual dedication that characterized American military aviation maintenance operations during World War II. No orders had been given requiring these men to risk their lives. They had simply recognized that their technical skills were needed and had responded without hesitation, despite the obvious dangers. The final phase of Bobby's repair work involved pressure testing the fuel system to ensure there were no leaks that could cause engine failure or fire during flight operations. This testing required starting the P-51's engine
and running it at various power settings while monitoring fuel pressure gauges and checking for visible leaks at connection points throughout the system. Starting an aircraft engine during an active bombing raid presented obvious risks. The noise and exhaust smoke would make the aircraft a conspicuous target for Japanese bombers looking for valuable planes to destroy. But without engine testing, Bobby couldn't verify that his repairs had been successful, and Major Hayes would be flying an aircraft that might fail at the worst moment during combat operations. Bobby made the decision to proceed with engine testing despite the risks, understanding that properly verified repairs were essential for Major Hayes' safety during his upcoming mission. He climbed into the cockpit, initiated the engine start sequence, and brought the Packard Merlin engine to life with a roar that echoed across the smoke-filled airfield. The engine ran smoothly despite the extensive battle damage and field repairs, producing full power across the entire throttle range without any indication of fuel system problems. Bobby monitored gauges carefully, looking for any signs of hydraulic leaks or pressure anomalies that would indicate problems with his repairs. After 10 minutes of testing at various power settings, he was satisfied that Major Hayes' P-51 was fully mission-capable. As Bobby shut down the engine and climbed out of the cockpit, he realized that the Japanese bombing attack had finally ended. The airfield was covered with bomb craters, several aircraft had been destroyed or severely damaged, and fuel storage tanks were burning furiously, sending columns of black smoke thousands of feet into the tropical sky. But Major Hayes' P-51 remained intact and operational, ready for the critical mission that would take place later that afternoon. Major Hayes appeared at the aircraft within minutes of the all-clear signal, having emerged from the command bunker where he had been coordinating squadron operations during the attack. His expression showed amazement that his fighter had not only survived the bombing, but had been repaired and tested during the raid itself. "Sergeant Chen, you're either the bravest man I've ever met or the craziest," Hayes said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I watched from the bunker as bombs fell all around my aircraft while you kept working underneath it. I was certain I'd lost both my plane and my best mechanic." Bobby's response reflected the pragmatic attitude that characterized aircraft mechanics throughout the Pacific Theater. "Sir, the aircraft needed repairs, and I had the parts and tools to fix it. Waiting after the raid would have meant you'd miss your mission, so I fixed it during the raid."
Let us know in the comments what you think about such matter-of-fact courage in the face of death. Major Hayes' mission that afternoon achieved precisely the results that American commanders had hoped for. Flying the P-51 that Bobby had repaired under fire, Hayes led his squadron in an attack against a Japanese convoy that was attempting to reinforce enemy positions on nearby islands. The mission resulted in the sinking of 2 transport vessels and damage to several escorting warships, significantly disrupting Japanese supply operations in the region. The success of the mission validated Bobby's decision to continue repair work during the bombing attack, demonstrating that his technical skills and personal courage had directly influenced tactical outcomes that affected the entire Pacific campaign. His actions represented the kind of dedication and initiative that made American military aviation so effective despite operating from primitive forward bases with limited resources. Bobby's repair of Major Hayes' aircraft became legendary within Marine aviation circles, representing the extraordinary lengths that mechanics would go to keep aircraft operational under impossible conditions. His story was repeated in maintenance units throughout the Pacific Theater, inspiring other mechanics to maintain the same level of dedication and courage when facing similar circumstances. But Bobby himself remained characteristically modest about his achievement, viewing it as simply doing his job under difficult circumstances, rather than performing any kind of heroic action. When questioned about his decision to work during the bombing raid, he consistently emphasized that aircraft maintenance was always dangerous work, and that enemy action simply added one more hazard to an already challenging profession. The immediate military recognition of Bobby's actions came in the form of a Bronze Star for Valor, awarded for his exceptional courage and technical skill in repairing critical aircraft under enemy fire, directly contributing to successful combat operations. But the more meaningful recognition came from the pilots whose lives depended on Bobby's mechanical expertise and his unwavering commitment to keeping their aircraft operational regardless of circumstances.
Bobby continued serving as an aircraft mechanic at Henderson Field throughout 1943 and into 1944, maintaining Marine fighters and bombers under conditions that remained challenging despite improvements in base facilities and defensive capabilities. His reputation as the mechanic who would fix anything under any circumstances made him one of the most valued members of the maintenance squadron, with pilots specifically requesting that he work on their aircraft before critical missions. After the war ended, Bobby returned to San Francisco, where he used his military experience and GI Bill benefits to open his own aircraft maintenance business. His company specialized in servicing civilian aircraft, using the improvisation skills and technical expertise he had developed during his wartime service at forward Pacific bases. The business thrived throughout the 1950s and 1960s, becoming one of the most respected aircraft maintenance operations on the West Coast. In 1975, 32 years after the incident at Henderson Field, Bobby was invited to speak at a reunion of VMF 214 squadron members. Major Hayes, now a retired colonel, introduced Bobby to the assembled veterans with words that captured the essential truth about support personnel who made combat operations possible. Bobby Chen never flew a combat mission, never shot down an enemy aircraft, and never received the public recognition that combat pilots received. But without his courage and skill, none of us would have been able to accomplish our missions or survive the war. Bobby's response to Hayes's introduction reflected the humility that had characterized his entire military service. "I was just the mechanic. You pilots were the ones who took all the risks and achieved all the victories. I was proud to keep your aircraft flying so you could do your jobs." Robert Chen died in 1998 at age 81, having lived a full life that included successful business ventures, a large family, and the satisfaction of knowing that his technical skills and personal courage had contributed to Allied victory in the Pacific. His tools and work records from Henderson Field were donated to the National Museum of Naval Aviation, where they serve as reminders of the essential but often overlooked contributions made by maintenance personnel throughout military aviation history. Today, Bobby's story is taught in military aviation maintenance schools as an example of how technical personnel must sometimes work under combat conditions to keep aircraft operational for critical missions. His decision to repair Major Hayes's P-51 during an active bombing raid demonstrated that courage in warfare takes many forms, and that support personnel can influence tactical outcomes as directly as combat forces. Staff Sergeant Robert Chen proved that heroism in warfare often takes the form of quiet technical competence rather than dramatic combat actions, and that individual dedication to professional excellence can directly influence whether missions succeed or fail. His legacy reminds us that military effectiveness depends not just on combat prowess, but on the skills, courage, and determination of support personnel who keep complex systems operational under the most challenging conditions imaginable. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment to share your thoughts.